Welcome to Brave Awareness. I'm Ronn Pawo McLane, meditation teacher, author, and poet, and someone who's done their fair share of surviving. This podcast isn't here to teach you how to fix yourself. It's here to remind you that you're not broken. These are spoken transmissions for modern minds, reflections, disruptions, and sacred interruptions. Let's begin. Think of someone whose behavior has caused real harm. Not to you personally necessarily, though it may have. Just someone whose actions landed on people who didn't choose to receive them. Someone whose patterns are visible enough that you have an opinion about them. Someone you may have argued about. Someone whose name alone can change the temperature of a room. I'm not going to tell you who I'm thinking of, because I expect you already know who you're thinking of. Now hold that person in your mind for a moment. Don't argue with them yet. Don't defend them yet. Just hold them there. Last week I told you that you were never broken. You were conditioned. And I told you the same is true of everyone around you, including the people whose behavior is making your life harder, including the people whose decisions are making the world harder. And I meant every word of that. And I want to be very clear about what I did not mean. I did not mean, therefore it's fine. I did not mean, therefore you have no right to feel what you feel. I did not mean, therefore you should stay. Understanding is not the same as endorsing. Compassion is not the same as compliance. And the ability to see clearly, really clearly, is not the same as looking away. When we say that behavior emerges from conditioning, from the specific accumulation of everything a person experienced before they had the awareness to choose differently, we are offering an explanation. An explanation is not an excuse. An excuse says, therefore it doesn't matter, therefore no one was hurt, therefore we move on without looking at what happened. And an explanation says, this is how it came to be. This is the mechanism. This is the wound that learned to protect itself in ways that are now wounding others. These are not the same thing. The surgeon who understands exactly how a disease developed is not excusing the disease. They're creating the conditions in which something can actually be done about it. Understanding is not the end of accountability, it's the beginning of it. There is a distinction that gets lost almost entirely in public discourse, and in private ones too. The distinction between impact and intention. Someone can be doing their absolute best, operating from the fullest capacity available to them in that moment, and still cause real harm. Those two things are not in contradiction. They are both true simultaneously. The person who learned early that control kept them safe will control the people around them, even the ones they love. With everything they have, they will control them. They are not trying to cause harm. They are trying to survive. And the impact of their survival strategy on the people around them is harm. Both of those things are true. at the same time without canceling each other out. This is where most conversations about difficult behavior break down. We insist on choosing one truth. Either they meant well, in which case the harm doesn't count, or they caused harm, in which case the conditioning doesn't matter. But reality doesn't organize itself around our need for a clean verdict. Both are true, and holding both at the same time without collapsing into either one is one of the hardest things that awareness asks of us. This is the part most people find hardest to hold, because we've been taught, conditioned, you might say, to believe that accountability requires contempt. In order to hold someone responsible for the harm they've caused, we have to first decide that they are irredeemable, that they are other, that they are beyond the reach of understanding we extend to people that we like. But contempt is not clarity. Contempt is a nervous system in threat response that has decided certainty feels better than complexity. Accountability without contempt says, what happened is not acceptable. The impact is real. Something needs to change. And I can hold all of that without needing you to be a villain in order for it to be true. This is not weakness. This is the most precise and powerful position available. Because contempt closes the file. It ends the inquiry. It makes change impossible because it has already been decided that the person doing the harm is beyond the reach of understanding and therefore beyond the reach of anything that might actually interrupt the pattern. Conscious compassion, on the other hand, the kind that sees clearly without looking away, keeps that file open. Not because the harm doesn't matter, because it does. So what does this mean in practice? It means you're allowed to feel exactly what you feel about what someone has done. The anger, the grief, the exhaustion, the disbelief, all of it is valid. All of it is information. It means you are allowed to remove yourself from situations and relationships that are causing you harm. Understanding someone's conditioning is not a requirement to remain in proximity to its effects. It means you're allowed to want things to be different, to work toward things being different, to hold people and systems accountable for the impact of their behavior. What it asks, and I will not pretend that this is a small ask. What it asks, and I will not pretend this is a small ask, is that you do all of those things without building your position on contempt, without needing the other person to be evil in order for your experience to be valid, without outsourcing your stability to whether or not they finally understand what they have done. Because your clarity cannot depend on their awakening. This is what the practice actually requires. And it is, I think, the bravest thing awareness asks of us. Before we close, something to carry. Think of the person you were holding at the beginning of this episode, the powerful one, the one whose behavior is real and whose impact is real. Or even think of someone closer. Someone whose best wasn't enough for what you needed. Someone whose conditioning runs right into yours in ways that have caused genuine pain. Try this just as an experiment. Hold both of these at the same time. They were doing their best based on their capacity and conditioning. And their best caused real harm that I am allowed to name. Don't try to resolve the tension between those two things. Don't collapse into one or the other. Just hold them both and notice what becomes available in that space. Not forgiveness necessarily, not reconciliation, not the erasure of what happened. Just a little more room to breathe. Understanding is not the same as excusing. Compassion is not the same as compliance. And seeing someone clearly, really clearly, without contempt and without illusion, is not the same as looking away from what they've done. It is, in fact, the only way to look at it differently enough to change anything. Next week, we go deeper into what happens when an entire room full of people encounters the same thing and experiences it in completely different ways, and what that tells us about every argument we've ever had about anything. Until then, eyes open, compass steady, and remember your clarity cannot depend on anyone else's awakening. If this opened something for you, stay close. You can subscribe, share it, or just sit with what stirred. Brave awareness isn't a destination, it's a return. I'll meet you there again soon.